When we think of Henry VIII, we usually picture the massive, formidable king from the portraits, the man who broke with Rome and changed the course of English history forever. But if you look at the private correspondence between the king and Anne Boleyn, you find a very different, much more vulnerable man. In the book, The Love Letters of Henry VIII to Anne Boleyn offers us a rare, intimate window into a courtship that wasn't just a romantic affair, but a high-stakes political earthquake. These letters don't just show us a man in love, they show us a man trying to balance his identity as an absolute sovereign with his desperate, almost frantic need as a lover. To understand the shape of this story, we have to look at how the letters begin. This isn't a story of a king simply taking what he wants. Instead, it starts as a period of intense, courtly pursuit where Henry uses the language of service. He repeatedly refers to himself as Anne's servant or her suitor, asking her to clarify if her affection is merely ordinary or if it is the singular devotion of a true mistress. It's a fascinating paradox. Here is the most powerful man in Europe using the language of a subordinate to try and win over a woman who, at this stage, is playing a very careful game of resistance. One of the most striking ways Henry tries to bridge the distance between them is through the imagery of the hunt. He doesn't just send words, he sends symbols of his prowess and his devotion. In one notable instance, he sends Anne a buck that he killed with his own hands. It's a heavy, visceral gift that establishes a recurring metaphor throughout the correspondence, the hunter and the prey. He is the pursuer, and she is the prize, but the lines between the two are constantly blurring. He also sends her a portrait of himself set into a bracelet, a physical token meant to ensure that even when they are apart, he is always present against her skin. As we move through the timeline of the letters, the tone begins to shift. The poetic yearning and the romantic metaphors start to collide with the messy, exhausting reality of running a kingdom. Henry's letters become a strange mix of the deeply personal and the incredibly administrative. In the same breath that he is expressing his profound longing for Anne, he is writing about the heavy duties of the crown. He discusses managing outbreaks of the sweat, a deadly pestilence that was sweeping through his household, and he touches on the massive, controversial task of overseeing the reformation of religious houses. This creates a sense of mounting pressure. You can feel the tension rising in the prose. Henry is a man caught between two identities. On one hand, he is the administrative sovereign, dealing with the logistics of statecraft and the health of his subjects. On the other, he is an obsessed lover who feels the physical distance from Anne as a source of profound anxiety. He uses metaphors of astronomy and the natural world to describe his devotion. But underneath the flowery language, there is a growing frustration. He complains about rumours that Anne is avoiding the court, and he struggles with the legal and religious obstacles that stand in the way of their union. This is where the personal becomes political in a very literal sense. Henry's desire for Anne isn't just a matter of the heart, it is the engine driving his attempt to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. The letters show us that his romantic obsession is inextricably tied to the legal machinery of the church. He is navigating a diplomatic minefield, trying to find a way to make his personal desire legal in the eyes of God and the law. As the courtship intensifies, we see a significant shift in Anne's role as well. In the earlier letters, she is a figure of resistance. She is a woman who refuses to be a mere mistress, forcing Henry to change the entire structure of English religious life to accommodate her. But as the correspondence progresses, particularly as she enters a period of forced retirement from court, her temperament seems to change. Henry notes that she has abandoned her vain thoughts and has become more conformable to reason. This is a pivotal moment in the narrative. It suggests that Anne is transitioning from a romantic interest into a political partner. She is no longer just the object of his pursuit, she is becoming a participant in his endgame. She begins to align herself with the reason required to secure their marriage, helping him navigate the complex, often stalled progress of his divorce. The letters reveal just how much of a struggle this becomes. The path to their marriage is not a smooth ascent, it is a series of delays and frustrations. Henry's legal battle is constantly hampered by external forces, such as the ill health of the papal legate, Campeggio, and the ongoing disputes regarding the legate's authority. You get the sense that Henry is running out of patience, caught in a loop of waiting for religious authorities to grant him the freedom he believes he deserves. The correspondence reaches its climax in May of 1529. This is a critical turning point where the private world of the lovers and the public world of the state collide with maximum force. The legal machinery for the king's divorce is finally in full motion, and the arrival of a new legate in Paris is imminent. The letters conclude at this precarious moment, leaving the outcome of their union hanging in the balance. At this point in the story, the future of Anne's position and the very stability of the English Church are tied together in a knot that can only be untied by radical change. When we step back from the letters to look at the bigger picture, several themes emerge that help us understand why this period was so transformative. First, there is the tension between service and sovereignty. It is a profound psychological study of a man who holds absolute power over everyone else, but feels himself to be a servant to his own passion. He uses the language of submission to try and exert control, creating a linguistic tension that defines their entire relationship. Then there is the conflict between reason and passion. We see Henry struggling to reconcile his impulsive romantic desires with the cold, legalistic requirements of the state. To get what he wants emotionally, he has to act with a calculated, often ruthless, political logic. This tension is what ultimately drives the English Reformation. The personal desire for a specific woman necessitates a total break from the established religious order of Europe. We also see the evolution of Anne's agency. She is not just a passive recipient of Henry's affection. She is a sophisticated, highly educated woman who understands the power she holds. Her transition from a resistant courtier to a woman who helps guide the king toward a political and religious endgame shows her navigating a very dangerous game. She moves from being the prey in Henry's hunting metaphors to being a central architect of a new political reality. Ultimately, these letters show us that in the Tudor court, the private and the public were never truly separate. A king's heart was a matter of state. The passion found in these pages didn't just stay within the walls of the palace, it spilled out into the streets, the churches, and the halls of Parliament. The letters serve as a map of a high-stakes courtship that changed the map of Europe. They show us that while the history books focus on the crown and the laws, the true engine of change was often found in the intense, complicated, and sometimes desperate letters sent between two people trying to rewrite the rules of their world.